So should I just start?
You can go ahead, Peter.
Great. Great. Well, nice to meet everyone. My name is Peter Dooley. I am an organizer for a group that you're seeing our website on the page, which is the National Council for Occupational Safety and Health. We're a grassroots organizing health and safety advocacy group that's been around for more than 45 years. It started literally, the first group was in Chicago. Very soon after OSHA got passed. The federal OSHA legislation was passed in 1970. And the first group got started, like I say, in Chicago in 1971. And we've been growing ever since. We now have 22 groups around the country, including the national, our sort of umbrella organization. That's sort of a virtual organization. I go between here in Tucson, Arizona, and Michigan, and we have people in LA, Boston area, and also Michigan, and we've been, like I say, kind of growing. We've had like 6 or 7 new groups in the last several years around the country. We hope to have more of a presence here in Southern Arizona, and Joe has been kind of part of some of the activities that we've been doing over the last like 5 years, and we'll continue to kind of work on that. So anyway, I wanted to show you the website because it has a lot of resources related to COVID-19, with the topic that we're going to talk about today, as well as a lot of kind of the background about workplace health and safety issues in general. We recently, our co-director was interviewed just 2 evenings ago on Rachel Maddow's show, specifically around the whole crisis and organizing efforts related to meatpacking and poultry workers. And in the link, in the chat, I put a link to a recent podcast that I was interviewed for, that just came out like on Friday, which is on this whole topic of how workers are organizing related to much needed protections around the virus. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a kind of a backdrop and sort of how this whole issue is front and center right now, related to worker protection from the virus, and related activity, campaigns, and organizing activity that's going on around the country right currently. But that's in the context of workplace health and safety organizing and campaigns, is a huge, has a huge history, and has been a huge worker issue for decades and decades. But it never has been as front and center as it is right now related to the virus. And some of the things that we're seeing as to how it's played out related to workers is just showing the kinds of crisis that is happening all the time. But it's so spread out. It's workers getting killed and getting exposed to things every day, and it's when you look at the big sort of year by year, it's pretty dramatic. But every day it doesn't seem to catch a lot of traction. There's periodic highlighting of a really bad situation where multiple workers get killed and such, but it's often sort of underappreciated by the public. It is much appreciated by workers, and it's literally one of the best organizing tools that we have to really have workers see what it means to be organized and to get better protections and to be able to negotiate workplace health and safety provisions in their contracts and such, or get a contract, literally get a union, and that's my history is working as an organizer that specialized in sort of having health and safety issues be part of organizing campaigns. So just a really quick kind of backdrop here. So each year there's a tremendous workplace health and safety toll that happens in the way of workplace fatalities, serious injuries, and workers getting exposed to things that they're going to die from typically 20 or 30 years later because of the long latency period that a lot of these exposures take time to develop cancer and other illnesses. But what we know is, so each year, and the worst situations is workers getting killed literally on the job in traumatic injuries that literally the worker is either instantly killed or within days or weeks or months, and more than 5,000 workers are killed each year in these kinds of incidents where it's pretty much horrible situations, being crushed, falling from heights, all kinds of horrible situations, being drowned, and situations like that. But that's just kind of a small percentage, because the best estimate is 100,000 workers are killed by these illnesses, these exposures to chemicals and radiation and whatever, that again typically has this long latency period, and they're very, very hard to prove, which a lot of workers' compensation systems, the burden of proof is on the worker to prove that they got the illness as a result of their working conditions. So they're very hidden, and through this, it's always been the case that Black and brown workers or other ethnic minorities at the time were most impacted by the injury and illness, basically because they were taking the worst, the most hazardous jobs. They were being put in the worst hazardous jobs. They were often like literally back in 30s and 40s. There's towns in Michigan that are literally black majority because they had a foundry in town, and the foundries were being sort of abandoned, sort of left by white workers, and black workers were migrating from the South and taking those jobs. And one of the ways I got involved in this field was I worked in several foundries. But anyways, it's that history of racial, basically, racing to the bottom, taking advantage of any more vulnerable workers. So in today's world, meatpacking and including poultry and hog processing, those are all, those jobs have been shifted in terms of who's working them. Many undocumented workers, immigrant workers. They're very, very, very hazardous situations all the time. And now you're seeing all of the news about, in one case, 1,000 COVID confirmed cases in a Smithfield plant, but at several others, hundreds, and just horrible, horrible situations. And so this whole issue of workplace health and safety has really been boiling over, sort of happening for a long time. But now with the virus, it's really brought out a lot into the public, how abusive this is for frontline workers. And again, black and brown workers, are known to be twice at risk, 2 times at risk for fatalities related to COVID. And that's mostly sort of attributed to the fact that they're overrepresented in the work that's being done as essential work, whether it be transportation workers, public sector workers in general, meatpacking, of course, where by the way they've been forced into work in terms of by presidential executive order that has used the Defense Act to keep meatpacking plants open, even though the plants themselves were at a point where they were closing down in order to sanitize and such, because so many cases had gotten developed. So anyway, it's never ever been before the level of public attention to this issue about how workers are being put in life-threatening, dangerous situations, and it's based on that there's without protections, and that it's simply that workers' lives are not being sort of considered very valuable in order to really provide the kind of protection that's possible and it's necessary. The other thing to keep in mind is all of these things: workplace health and safety, injuries, illnesses, deaths, they're all preventable. I mean, we know how to use technology to protect people from a virus or any other hazardous environment. The fact that workers were being thrown in this situation, even healthcare workers, But all these different, essential worker classifications literally being put, into jobs with little or no protections, not even, the bare minimum. I mean, these N95 respirators, I mean, they're throwaway. They're throwaway respirators. They're like the least protective kind of respirator. They're hot to wear. There's a lot of disadvantages. There's a lot of other ways that the work can be organized to protect workers, and figure out how to make it safe. But that wasn't worth sort of the business at hand or whatever. And so a lot of workers, including retail workers, food, supermarket workers, all kinds of workers. And so it's just been such a dramatic scenario about how horrible the situation has been and how little workers' lives have been considered. So from there, you get the fight back. And the silver lining about this is that this situation is so dramatic that workers have gotten to a point where they recognize that the situation is just so unfair. They see coworkers being confirmed cases. They see little or not enough being done to protect them, and they have started to do to be organizing. Organizers have been sort of out there seizing the moment and educating workers about what could be done, what needs to be done. And there's never been this level of organizing, certainly in my lifetime, that I've seen. And again, worker health and safety is front and center. And they've been tremendously successful. There's over, and I should put, there's a website that's tracking job actions. And the last time I looked, which was last week, was over 150 job actions around the country. But I'm sure by now it's got to be over a couple hundred. And these activity, strikes and organizing activity where they're happening have been tremendously successful. Because you can imagine. I mean, how the hell can an employer, fight, sort of manage to not be willing to openly, meet with workers, consider the demands, given the public relations of it all. I mean, work. So for example, one of the groups in Washington State, this organization, and the organizer is Ramon Torres, who we had on. By the way, on our site we have the recording and such for the webinar that we did last week on essential workers, and you'd see Ramon on there, sort of joining us. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, he has seven packing houses in I think it's Bellington, Washington State. 7 packing houses that are out on strike. And there's a Facebook live interview with him, and it's him with the workers in the background, and it's pretty amazing to see all of these mostly Latinx workers that are just standing in unison, So he's planning on bringing these 7 different employers together and to basically bargain a master contract which is literally, I mean, I came out of the auto industry, and of course, you know, master contracts are a very, very successful strategy. And to be seeing this done with immigrant workers that are working in these packing houses, obviously workers are gaining, you know, all kinds of different protections. They're gaining increased wages, and there's so much that can be done, and you know, workers who are not you know, this time is just such an important time for workers to be organizing. It's happening all over the country, and the more that people hear and actually have you know, sort of contact with these other workers, which there's a lot of organizing happening by social media things. It's you know, it's a pretty amazing environment right now that offers a lot of you know, a lot of sort of hope for workers who need to be organized, right? I mean, this shows, I mean, you know, the vulnerabilities of our society and our system have never been so bearing naked to the world. And by the way, I mean, you know, a comparison to the essential, you know, what's happened in this, you know, in this country versus other countries is very different. I mean, I don't know, you know, from the beginning of this, when the outbreak happened in China, which, you know, handled this whole crisis very, very differently and much more successfully, by the way. I mean, what they did was pretty amazing in the sense of within a couple of months, they managed to basically, you know, sort of get to having no new cases. And that's, you know, compared with us after several months where we're having, you know, increasing in the number of deaths. By the way, Arizona, as you probably know, I mean, Arizona, we're still climbing the curve. We're getting more confirmed cases all the time, and the numbers are getting higher and higher. More fatalities happening. So we're one of 4 states that are in that situation. Most around the country, at least, they've plateaued or getting less, but we're going up. And of course, the situation is everything is they're attempting to open things up, and it's a pretty bad situation in the sense that there's a very, very scary scenario that we're going to just you know, multiply cases, continue to have increased amounts in higher numbers, and more people are going to get killed. Right now, I know we're over 100,000 deaths in the U.S. from COVID. Probably, you know, and you have to know that a lot of that number is workers, are essential workers that have been, you know, sort of the most exposed from the beginning, and therefore, you know, take up a large percentage of confirmed cases as well as deaths that result from it. So I'm gonna, you know, at least stop or pause here and see if folks have any questions.